After reviewing the Dual Blaze last week, today we have the second innovation from Cosori, the TurboBlaze. So is this thing actually worth its price, and does it cook as fast as the name suggests? Of course, we've checked out all of this for you, and you will find out everything you need to know in this video. So stay tuned. We'll start, as always, with a brief overview.
The Cosori TurboBlaze has an output of 1725 watts and a capacity of 6 liters. You should be able to make 3 to 5 portions with it, according to the manufacturer. And as you know, we're always a bit skeptical about that. It's better to scale that down to 3 portions. The touchscreen on top is relatively flat and has relatively large pressure points, which helps with a user-friendly operation. That's pretty good. And it also looks quite nice. You always have to pay a little attention to the pressure point of these kinds of appliances because they tend to miss your input. But it's definitely a much better solution here on the TurboBlaze than it is with cheaper devices. As far as predefined programs are concerned, a total of 10 are included, 4 of which are in turbo mode. These are air fry, roast, grill, and a setting for frozen foods. There are also other settings like dry, proofing, and bake. And then there's a couple of other settings like the warm keep, reheat, and preheat functions. We've already mentioned the turbo mode. Of course, that's an important point with this device. It's the real special feature of this appliance, after all. Basically, this means that you have different fan speeds, and if you select the turbo mode presets, for example, you get the highest setting. In other words, you have the most oomph. And if you now select one of the other presets, you get a correspondingly lower fan speed. We would like to mention one important thing at this point. It seems that you cannot set the fan speed manually. Instead, it seems to be linked to the respective preset, and we personally think that that's a bit of a shame. But does the whole thing make a difference at least? We'll take a closer look at the cooking results later on. As far as the temperature range is concerned, we are looking at 30 to 230 degrees Celsius. It is important to know that this is also set depending on the preset you chose. In other words, you can usually get up to 230 degrees. But if you want very low temperatures, you have to set the preset for dry or proofing so that you get to 30 or 35 degrees. Otherwise, it won't work. The same applies to the timer. Generally, you can only go up to 60 minutes. If you want to go higher than that, you have to select the appropriate preset, for example, dry. You can go up to 24 hours with this, or proofing, which goes up to 12 hours. Apart from that, this appliance has another special feature which we didn't expect, and that is the sound design. Normally, these appliances beep and buzz at you. That's pretty standard, really. There are sounds that indicate something, but they've done it differently with this device. They have developed a real sound design. It sounds almost like a video game. Really well recorded and pleasantly reproduced. So with this in mind, okay, let's talk a bit more about the other features, which are often forgotten. First point is that the device has no transportation handles. That's a bit of a shame, but still. At 6 kilos, the appliance is relatively light, so it's fairly easy to move out of the way even without transportation handles. Second point is that the appliance has 4 non-slip feet. This is also particularly important because of the fact that the appliance moves around a lot when you push or pull the drawer in and out. That is unpleasant, so it's good that the manufacturer has thought of including some. It's also important to know the measurements so that you can find an appropriate place for the appliance at home. The height and width are 30 times 30.1 centimeters, and the depth is 40 centimeters. We also always measure the cable length. This is not insignificant for some people. We got around 1 meter for this appliance. This is an average value. To conclude our brief overview, we get back to the scope of delivery. There really isn't much to say. In the end, it only comes with the tray, the mesh inlay, and a recipe booklet with 30 recipes. That's not so much, but hey, at least it's something. If you want more recipes, you can find them in the VSync app, which also includes detailed instructions for the TurboBlaze. By the way, if you're interested in the product, take a look at the description below the video. You'll find the link there. Otherwise, we'll now get down to the essentials, namely our practical test. And as always, we'll start it the way you should at home. First of all, you should place the appliance on a heat-resistant surface and leave a little space around the appliance so that the air can circulate properly. Then it's best to clean the appliance once. At least, go through the tray and the mesh with a damp cloth. And if possible, run the appliance at 180 to 200 degrees for 10 minutes or so to allow any odors to dissipate. As far as the operation is concerned, the TurboBlaze is pretty easy to use. You can simply set the temperature in 5-degree increments, the time in 1-minute increments, and of course you can also press and hold to skip through it like this. It's a bit quicker like that. To select the desired preset, simply tap on the relevant symbol, which is also very easy. And what we personally also find quite nice is the fact that the time and temperature are displayed at the same time. Unlike some other devices where these alternate between each other, you always have to wait for it to change. The fan speed is shown on the display as well, which is nice. What's kind of a bummer is the fact that you can't control the appliance via the app. Okay, now that we know how to use the thing, it's time to cook something with it, and we have another important tip for you first. Don't rely on the presets that are in there. Take a look at your food from time to time to see how far along the food is and whether it still needs some adjusting. The presets in there are just guidelines, and if you do it like that, the results will be pretty good in general. Our fries got crispy on the outside, tender on the inside, and very potatoey. Just be careful that they don't get too dry. But other than that, we got a good and tasty result. The same goes for chicken nuggets. Fries and nuggets, those are the basics. But what about potato wedges, a fresh potato product? We got a good and relatively even result here as well. They were nice and crispy on the outside and well done, but still fluffy and potato-like on the inside. So pretty good results. And we think you can see that as well. They were visually appealing. What many people also like to make in these air fryers are baked rolls. So we tested these out for you as well. In the end, they baked up perfectly. They were golden on the outside, and yes, we also opened them up to see what the inside looked like. And they were hot and fluffy. The next dish also worked pretty good, and that's chicken wings. It was on point and tasted well. You need to be a little careful with vegetables in this appliance. This is actually the case with all appliances. The cardinal rule, therefore, is what's cooked in the pot should stay in the pot. If you put plain broccoli in there, for example, it will get burnt relatively quickly. To prevent this from happening, please make a dish which is suitable for these air fryers, like roasted veggies, but then you'll also need to add a little oil. Many people also like to bake something with these appliances, which is why we always put a few muffins in there too. We have good results here as well. Baked nicely on the outside and a great color, fluffy but still baked through. In short, you can say that the cooking results were good. On the whole, there was nothing to complain about. But the big question remains, was it really faster than other appliances on the market? The answer is yes. We measured 20 to 30% faster cooking times, and that's saying something. A standard air fryer is already significantly faster than an oven, around 50 or 60% faster. If you then add another 20 to 30% on top of that, yeah, that's quite a lot. Okay, let's move on to the handling. And here's the first special feature we noticed. There is a tray release button. That's something we haven't really seen that often yet. Hopefully it becomes more popular because it really is practical. If you want to transport the appliance and want to put it away or something, then one or two stronger movements are sometimes enough for the drawer to come out. And if you have a tray release button, they won't, of course. We like the additional security. The next point when it comes to the handling are the mesh inlays. A general problem with these types is that if you want to shake or put the food on the plate, they sometimes come loose and fall onto the plate. And that's not so good, of course. That's why we always test these appliances and give them a good shake. And with the TurboBlaze, they didn't fall out so easily. It was fine in the end. We also think that the mesh inlays themselves look really good. They seem sensibly designed and also make a well-made impression. The only disadvantage is that food can sometimes get underneath those. And then you end up with crispy air-fried fries underneath. This is not quite as nice, of course. This applies not only to this appliance, though. Pretty much all appliances that work with such inlays share this problem. Let's move on to the volume and sound impression. We also have to say that we have a very quiet operating noise in addition to the already appealing sound design. We measured around 60 decibels, perhaps a little above that, but it's a pleasant quiet noise without any disturbing frequencies. So there was nothing to complain about. We were generally satisfied with the appliance in terms of its heat development. In other words, this means that the handle remains cold, which is good. The drawer behind it gets quite warm, but is still tolerable. So if you grab the handle, you don't immediately burn your fingers when you accidentally touch the drawer. The display also stays cool. This makes it pleasant to use. You have to be a bit careful on the right-hand side in the upper area. It gets relatively hot there. Hot air can of course also come out of the rear air outlet. You have to be a bit careful there too. But in general, we were quite satisfied with the heat management. Let's move on to the workmanship. And the first point for us is the appearance. We think that this device is really good at this. The design with the display on top looks really appealing, but if you take a closer look, you'll also find a few little flaws. For example, these gaps, which of course isn't that nice. In the end, it's only a minor bummer though. Other than that, the drawer closes much more firmly than with the dual blaze, which is quite good. There was quite a bit of wobbling involved with the dual blaze. That was a bit frustrating. But the TurboBlaze has definitely done a better job in that regard. The display also looks very high quality and seems to be fitted in well. The same goes for the plastic used. Maybe a dent here and there, but on the whole, it's a well-manufactured device. Let's move on to cleaning. We actually have it relatively easy with the TurboBlaze. The tray and mesh inlay are dishwasher-proof, which is also very important because it saves a lot of time. As far as the result in the dishwasher is concerned, everything was fine too. You could see that there were still 1 or 2 spots left. But even compared to other appliances on the market, you can't complain. Let's come to the conclusion. We have a mid-range device here, which in our opinion lives up to its name. After all, it's called TurboBlaze. And yes, it also works much faster than other air fryers on the market. At least that's what our test showed. The sound design, appearance, and workmanship also made a positive impression. The missing transportation handles and the half-hearted app integration are a bit of a shame. We definitely missed the option of controlling the device via the app, and it would have been great to be able to set the fan speed manually. It didn't come across so badly in our test, but we still miss it. Otherwise, we were very satisfied. Cooking results, operation and handling, heat management, volume, all were good. If you're looking for a classic air fryer with a little more than 5 liters for the family, which does a solid job and goes turbo in terms of speed, you're definitely on the right track with this device. With this in mind, if you are interested in the product, take a look at the description below the video. You will find the link there. And if you're still not sure which device is right for you, then take a look at this video here. There we compare different devices with each other. This will certainly help you to find the right appliance for you.